People who were poor and married rich. What were some startling differences in social situations you had to learn to deal with? I'm dating a girl whose family makes a lot more money than mine. One thing I've noticed is how going out to eat works. With my family, you get an entree and that's pretty much it. We're not poor or anything, but you get what you need and you're full at the end of it. With my girlfriend's family, they get the works. A few appetizers. They always ask me if I want something to drink, even if it's like a $12 bourbon. And then of course you get dessert at the end. I love eating out with my girlfriend's family. You are gonna get so fat, but happy. I never married but dated a guy for 5 years who had a very well-paying job, nice house, nice vehicle, no debt, etc. I'd say the biggest difference was if you needed something, you just went and got it. No planning or saving needed. Wanted to eat out every day of the week? Why not? Want to go on a trip to the other side of the world next week? Sure. I've met a lot of really rich people through business now, and the common ground between working rich and private jet rich seems to be that none of them think they're rich, and they all say they're comfortable, lol. I've met a lot of really rich people through business now, and the common ground between working rich and private jet rich seems to be that none of them think they're rich, and they all say they're comfortable, lol. Unless they were born into a poor family and made it to their position via hard work and or luck. Very few people truly appreciate how well off they are at that point. Not married but I still can't get used to all the waste. Don't want to finish your food? Toss it. Stain on a shirt? Toss it. Small chip on the vase? Toss it. Scratch on the screen? Toss it. I come from a poor family where my mom brought home almost spoiled fruit from the grocery store she worked at to feed us. So this is a very foreign concept to me. Agree. Married into money and my wife's family refuses to eat leftovers, so any extra food, whether it's from a restaurant or Thanksgiving, goes home with me instead of in the trash. Bigger emphasis on the value of mental health. When I went through a depression, I got much more support from my family-in-law because therapy and self-care was a luxury they could afford. I love my parents, but when you spend your life struggling to make ends meet, the attitude is basically, suck it up, there are bigger problems. It's not all about you. Disclaimer, I did not grow up poor, but my family was incredibly frugal. We had a good life, and we were never in need of anything. My husband's family is very well off, and the culture shock of being part of the family hasn't worn off yet. They're extremely generous and kind people, for which I'm grateful. I just feel so awkward talking about money or spending it around them. It's even awkward discussing it here because I feel like I should be thankful and not overanalyze it. As someone already said, eating out is wildly different. My parents packed us sandwiches and cereal bars on vacations, and then we ate out for dinner. Restaurants were for birthdays only. Other than that, my husband's family orders appetizers, expensive entrees, desserts, drinks, everything, and his father picks up the tab every time for all of us. I tried to pick up the tip early on and got laughed out of the room. Christmases and birthdays are wildly uncomfortable for me. My family gives 1 or 2 gifts to each person, and often the gifts are sometimes handmade. Store-bought cards are considered a waste of money. There's a lot of thought put into each gift or homemade card. His family spends an inordinate amount on actual piles, of presents and multiple cards. Christmas takes hours. I remember crying the first year my husband and I were together because I felt simultaneously thankful and somehow guilty for accepting so much from them. I never got an allowance or spending money growing up. My father-in-law now sneaks spending money into my purse or my husband's wallet about half of the time we see him, just because we're both making decent money and don't need it. Out to a movie? Here's money for popcorn and drinks. Going on vacation? Go do something fun. Summer? Go buy some summer clothes. It's bizarre, even after 5 years. Tried to pick up the tip early on and got laughed out of the room. Once you're filthy rich, money makes more money just sitting there. It would be foolish to spend hard-earned money on such things. Don't worry about it. Enjoy it. Take advantage of it. Maybe do some good with it. Didn't marry him, but ex's family was comfortably wealthy. One of many surprising things was the way they ate ribs. I was raised to use my hands to hold the ribs and just go to town. But his family cut the meat off each rib and ate it with a fork and knife. No hand to meat touching. I felt like such a barbarian, lol. That sounds so time consuming. When I feel fancy I'll pick up the ribs with bits of napkin. Like when I'm out with people. But getting cutlery involved seems excessive for a dang rib. Money versus time. I'm from an upper middle class family. My wife's family were in a pretty unstable financial situation when her dad died in her mid-teens, after his business collapsed. The major difference is that I'm willing to trade money for time. My wife wants to go to a baby items sale where she can get, say, a set of bottles plus sterilizer for 50% off, $150 instead of $300 for the set. My standpoint is that rather than spending an entire Saturday morning getting the stuff and queuing for hours, I would much rather she pay the extra and we have that time free. I know it's an extravagance, but it's one I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford if it means that my heavily pregnant wife and I don't need to stand in a queue for hours. My standpoint is that I value my time. This gets her extremely agitated though. On the 14th of March, a local pizzeria had a promotion where you got a personal pizza for $3.14. The line out the door of the place that day was scary. Keep in mind that these pizzas were normally $7.99. Social interactions with people I converse with. I didn't marry rich but came upon a position in my field that gave me a huge boost in quality of life than what I had growing up. I don't know if it's just my experience, but I notice the facade and overall fake persona people have in my rich social circle. Fellow co-workers, friends of friends, than the people I grew up with that have a tell it like it is but not in a rude disrespectful way type. I feel I can never speak about how I really feel or just shoot the crap comfortably with the more richer peers. It's more like I'm a political diplomat that has to keep a perfect image. Okay, well now I'm just curious what you do. Not poor or married but in an upper class university on a scholarship. How easy it is for people to just spend money. I recently purchased a laptop after months of research, looking up articles for rumors about future releases, watching the trends of the currently inflated RAM and graphics cards, buying it from America online and shipping it here. Friend here decides he wants a MacBook at 9 o'clock. As it's in his possession by 12:30. Not trying to bash anyone here, but left me speechless for a moment. There's a teamwork mentality when you are poor. Growing up or even before the rich life, I'd hear my mom ask my grandparents, can you front me $100 until I get paid Friday? And everyone would pitch in so we wouldn't be hungry. Life was simpler and you'd get excited over little things like everyone getting together for a barbecue and having enough for everyone to eat. Sure, there was the stress of bills and all of that, but I always felt we were all in it together. Like everyone accepted everyone for who they were and none of us had much. So that's just the way it was. I got super excited on Saturdays when my mom told us we'd go garage sale shopping. This was a really big deal. These days my world is full of people who put a lot of emphasis on labels and who wears what. But at my core, I'm still the girl who appreciates anything new. I don't care how much money I have, I will never spend crazy amounts on clothes. In the rich life, there's more secrecy or the hesitation to be vulnerable. There's more emphasis on labels and vacations and who drives what, versus growing up when the whole family stopped to see my mom's brand new car that really had 150k miles on it. There's an expectancy of having the best, and that's why the rich often want more. With children, I feel like there's a separation. BC everyone has big rooms and cell phones and the best video games and live a fast-paced life to remain stimulated. Versus in my poor childhood days, we'd all gather around the Sega Genesis the entire day waiting for our one turn. Then we'd eat the same meal and watch TV together and all pile in the room together. Just things like that. Till I miss the poor life. My soap comes from a family that's wealthier than mine. I was shocked by how they all just expect the father to take care of them. My so and his siblings live in homes their father pays for even though they are adults. His mother does not work. Even if the father is not there, they happily use his money to pay for dinners, gas, etc. In return, he treats them all like children. If I go to see my mother, then I try to carry my weight, help out around the house, pay for stuff we do eat, cook for her. Just a warning, your so and siblings are the kind of people who have a good chance of losing it all after the parent passes away, statistically speaking. how powerful their whole social circle is. My boyfriend's family is very rich and it's just amazing how in every family get together everyone is the owner of 2 or 3 major companies, has worked in the government at some point, etc. I do appreciate that they are self-aware and know they have everything. His cousin recently graduated college and her aunt said something along the lines of, even though you have your life resolved and will never need anything, it is important to receive proper education to be a good citizen. Her aunt sounds like an amazing person for trying to distill these values. My wife was the poor one in the relationship. What amazes me is everyone being so insistent on splitting bills and finding parity. At the end of a vacation, her family or friends pull receipts out of every pocket and the split is figured down to the penny, so everyone paid the same amount for the vacation. I tossed all my receipts the first year and they expected me to show them my bank statements so they could see all of my spending from the trip. The accommodations are split based on income with her family and per bed with her friends. So I really get screwed with the former. My wife told them my income against my wishes. In my family, the person extending the invitation pays all expenses for all invitees once they arrive at the destination. Accommodations, meals, entertainment, etc. I've never heard of anyone, poor or rich, splitting a bill based on your income. That's incredibly bizarre and sounds like they made it up just to take advantage of you. I'm not rich, but I've seen the promised land. I've definitely been poor. The transition and/or contrast between older, poorer, friends and newer, richer acquaintances can be managed if you choose intelligent. Friends who aren't insecure or wrapped up in being self-conscious, and acquaintances who aren't judgmental and self-absorbed. IMHO social class is different from economic class. One main difference I have noticed are the length, frequency, and use of free time. The well-off travel internationally regularly or semi-regularly, and tend to travel domestically regularly, even if it is for work. Budgeting is a crucial life skill when you're poor and more an option for exercising mental self-discipline when one is flush with disposable income. When you're poor you have to tridge needs. Food is the easiest thing to spend less on or forego in the name of saving up money for a repair, item, or necessary service. Learning how to do things yourself. Time can sometimes be a substitute for money. Thank God for YouTube can also keep irregular expenses lower. Among some of the skills I picked up were how to solder, mod a PS2, recover a bar box pool table, repair a motorcycle, etc. Needs are determined by how quickly or slowly they will affect your health, way of life and financial viability. Choosing a routine that doesn't leave you broke before the end of every pay period is very important. When you're well off, want to replace needs and are prioritized by amount of desire and level of convenience. If you somehow overspend here and there, definitely possible with lifestyle inflation, then it's relatively easy to coast off of savings. Of the fluff of that lifestyle, spare food, spare car with gas, spare cash in a jacket pocket, spare credit, etc. For days or weeks or even months without having to change your routine much. Oh, and the people you hang out with change. Changes in lifestyle make it more of an obstacle to spend time with people of a different economic class. The places you live become different. The food you eat can become different. Heck, even the work schedule and flexibility of the schedule changes. I'm not married yet, but I grew up poor. My family had fallen on hard times and we were on food stamps, the free lunch program, disability as my dad lost his ability to work, Medicaid, you name it, and my mom had tried to get assistance. We still barely had enough to get by. I got a job at 12 and sometimes had to pay the rent. When I was moving to college, the landlord was threatening eviction because they couldn't pay the rent. We lived in a moderately middle class area with lots of conflicting class feelings. My fiancé comes from an upper middle class family. Never had to worry about money. They aren't like stupid rich, but they always had more than enough to get by. There's 2 things I can think of right now that haven't been said to death on the thread. When she needs clothes, she just goes out and buys the clothes she needs. Her mom's idea of a good vacation idea is visiting the mall, and maybe growing up chubby and poor. But I hate buying clothes, I hate spending money on them, and I hate throwing away old clothes. I literally make her put old clothes that can't be saved in the trash for me. When something is wrong with her car, she gets it fixed. If a warning light goes on, She gets it checked out and is riddled with anxiety until it's fixed. I went home for a bit and my sister was driving us around in the family car and had to double check with my other sister how many warning lights were supposed to be on. Also, my fiancé always fills the gas tank all the way instead of just putting $10 or $20 in until you can put another $10 or $20 in. I even have my own steady income where I'm getting by and not scraping by, and it's so weird just to get things when you need them. This was longer than I anticipated it being. Whoops. Not married yet, but my partner's family is wealthy. What's insane to me is that they don't realize how wealthy they are. They go to Europe once a year, their home is worth over $1 million, etc. But they used to be much more wealthy and lost a lot in the housing market crash. So to them, they're not rich. Meanwhile, my family was briefly homeless and my mom has always worked multiple jobs. She teaches college students. I paid my way through college and took out loans for anything not covered by scholarships or work money. My partner's family paid for her school, and now for her siblings too. They're extremely kind and generous people, but I still think they can't quite see just how privileged they are. I grew up with welfare and food stamp. As a teenager, my parents worked but were very frugal. I wore the same clothes throughout the year and didn't get anything new until the next school year. When I started working and had my own money, I only shopped at affordable and used clothing stores. When I married my very wealthy husband, I was thrown into a world where you wore new, brand name clothes every day, rarely wore anything twice. It took me a long time to get adjusted to buying a dress that was more than $50 LOL, or shoes too. Now I don on clothes that can be worth someone's rent payment on a daily basis. I still wear clothes that are affordable when I go back to visit my family. BC, some people have a hard time paying attention to anything else but the price tags. On a personal note, I love inviting people to go out and have a good time dining at the more higher end restaurants. I could never did that when I was working at my minimum job and NGL. I love paying the bills now. It's my favorite thing to do since I know my friends' siblings can't afford to go to those places. I suppose on the flip side, if you're just wearing things once, you now get to be on the other end of the used clothing store donation chain. Maybe there are frugal teenagers out there who will wear your stuff for years and then patch it up and wear it for years more. I grew up poor with wealthy, billionaire family. They're really wonderful. The main thing that bugs me is that they just don't see a lot of the service people in their lives in the same way I do. I don't mean the people they're close to, because they support anyone who works for them all the time like their family. But stuff like cutting the line or doing weird stuff in stores that makes clerks uncomfortable or sending food back when it was fine. Once, there was someone coming to swap out a rug, for example, and they just left the dude standing there for 5 minutes because they were in the middle of something. I just can't imagine doing that because I've been there. Not necessarily with a rug, but I've been in a position where my work and time aren't really valued. Like I said, they're really great and do a ton of charity work and are the best kind of rich people, but it's a weird little thing I've noticed. Having worked in the food industry, as I imagine most in their 20s have, I can efficiently say that I hate people that make a fuss over perfectly fine food. The food they return has to be thrown away and is a waste of everyone's time and the business's money. Blah. Going to sit down on chain restaurants when we go out instead of getting fast food, the fake niceties when talking to other people in that social circle, not cussing or being overly enthusiastic when talking, not discussing things I did because I was poor. It makes people uncomfortable. The value that is put on looks. I'd rather be part of the guys' discussions that revolve around business, politics, etc. Weird, in my social circle, it's the women who talk politics, work, etc. The guys talk sports and discuss barbecue techniques. I was on the opposite end of this apparently. I had recently bought a nice house in the 100k range, and in showing around my fiancee's parents I called it a starter home with lots to work on. This caused a rather large verbal attack from her stepfather about how I have no respect for their family. They have owned their home for 25 years and no more on the loan than the value of the home due to illegal activities, bankruptcy, and it being a generally crappy home. I have since learned that anything related to finances, value, or work is just plain off limits to discuss. On a positive note, I jump-started my in-laws' midlife crisis. That just sounds like your in-law is in butthole. Not as extreme as poor to rich, but I grew up lower class and my wife grew up middle class. Her father made more than both of my parents combined. Her mom was a campaign manager for local politicians. They had a nice medium-sized house they built themselves, took family vacations. She always wore name brand clothes, etc. Compared to my family, which never bought anything name brand, or rarely even knew. I think we may have went on one family vacation, almost never had any form of professional medical care, and simply never bought anything that was a necessity. It took me a while to grasp the concept that every action doesn't have to revolve around working and saving money. Vacations were also very foreign to me for a while, and I used to get really irritable going on them at first, cause the idea of not working and then spending money in a manner that I deemed frivolous was mind-boggling. Didn't get married into money but adopted into money. Long story if you want to hear it, comment. Going from not having running water and having to steal food from Walmart to living in a mansion out in the country with all the chicken fry I could ever eat and people that actually cared for me. It kinda just made me think, dang, I am super lucky while my hood friends are still not doing well. Interested? I have read a adoption trend in Japan, where elders with no children adopt 20-somethings so as to pass on a business. No idea how prevalent it is. Ugh, my girlfriend and her real people bread. The other day, we decided we wanted some grilled cheeses, but I was out of bread. So, we go to the store and I go down the bread tortilla bagels aisle. I started to grab a bag of my fav bread when she stopped me and totally 100% seriously asked if the grocery store had any real people bread. I could tell she didn't mean any harm by it, but it just struck me how she had no idea that 99% of people use this bread for literally everything. It hadn't even occurred to me that Americans would make goddamn grilled cheese any differently. After a brief trip to the bakery and a loaf of his posh but sourdough, we made the best grilled cheese I've ever had. That being said, my butt is never spending that much on bread again unless she's paying. Wait, I'm American and don't know what real people bread is. Also, to change your life when making a grilled cheese, lightly coat the bread in mayonnaise and you'll get a perfect toast every time. I work in a very nice kitchen. I would consider myself to have been lower middle class while growing up. The thing that gets me about places like the one I work at is the presentation of food. Personally, I couldn't care less about how my food looks. I want it to be easy to eat and taste good. Also, our customers will pay out the butt for food. I understand that the product we receive, prep, send out is better than what most people will ever eat, but to pay as much as we charge for it, in the past week, I've had octopus, wagyu tenderloin, and prime rib, of which I brought a bit to my dad for Father's Day, which were all pretty damn good, but I'm not going to go it and order any of that for myself. I could be spending my money on more useful things. When I went to my expensive, private college from my hometown in Appalachia, a few things stunned me and the people I ended up dating. I did end up marrying a woman much more wealthy than me, but not quite as extreme. 1. They know how to pronounce a lot of stuff I had only ever read. Don Quixote. I guess Don Kick Socks. Can. My guess. Cannes. Heck. Even Foyer. My guess. Foyer. They get to hear it in their environment and don't have to guess at it, like I did in parentheses. 2. They lack some color in their language. I had no idea the name for a Brazil nut because I had only ever heard my grandpa call them a delightfully racist term. Also, apparently the term is jury rig, not your choice of two racist alternatives. I stepped in crap a few times there. 3. They order appetizers at restaurants and dessert, which still feels extravagant. Okay, so I do not fit this strata. However, I think my story kinda applies. Okay, so I dated a fairly rich girl. Her family was great. She was great. Any preconception you have should be removed. However, they were very sheltered. I was hanging out in her family's lounge, talking to her musically inclined uncle about prog rock. He had never heard about Rush and I just couldn't freaking understand it. This got to me talking about townies, aka a person who never leaves their hometown and hates those who does. All the lifers in my hometown know Rush. It's a given. Yet to her uncle, a townie was a person from the town school for boys. So here I am, as a man says, oh, no, I'm not a, townie. I went to insert competitor here. So, TLDR. I got to show exactly how low class I was to my ex's family by using a slang they didn't understand. Not married, but going to visit my Swedish boyfriend's parents always kinda blows my mind. They're not even remotely rich, they're middle class. I'm British and I grew up in rough neighborhoods. We lived very frugally to say the least. Council housing, crime up the wazoo. My mum burned through all her credit cards merely to raise me, etc. I grew up well and my mum brought me up well. I'm very polite, classy and well mannered. I always kinda expected to live a lower working class lifestyle all the same. Tinned food, all that jazz. I also had the internet, and that was how I met my current boyfriend who I now live with. Going to Sweden to visit him for the first time just blew my mind. Sweden blew my mind. His parents lived in a beautiful detached home with a huge garden and balcony and all the trimmings. Multiple bathrooms. I was like, this is a freaking palace, and I couldn't believe it. So yeah, I guess there was a wealth disparity there. He still teases me about my council diet. Sometimes I like beans on toast or fish finger sandwiches. So what? But we have reached a decent equilibrium and I always pay my half in rent bills. I just know that if I ever do end up moving to Sweden with him, I'm in for a culture shock of my life. The lap of luxury, that is, the normal life of an average Swede. I'll be craving my fried fish fingers and baked beans on toast, but all I'll get is smoked salmon or some other luxury food I'm not used to. Haha. I think everyone goes back to their childhood favorites no matter what. I've become a pretty decent cook and love making different somewhat fancy dishes. I also make cheeseburgers with boxed macaroni and cheese, or baked beans and breakfast sausage, or hamburger helper. It's what I grew up with. I dated a wealthier girl for a while. Most of the weirdness has been said, but I want to add how they actually socialized with their friends. They hosted dinner parties very often. They had a tight-knit friend group they got to see all the time because they all were able to have weekends off and could afford to feed a ton of people. My family would host the kids' friends at best, and parties only on birthdays. I remember my mom didn't have anybody to hang with for quite some time, and even today she really doesn't invite people over to just chill. Where do I begin? Controlled over money, not allowed to discuss our finances because what do you know, etc. I had my ex say that I needed to stop talking as if $10,000 is a lot of money, so much more. That sounds horribly toxic. Good to see that's an ex. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.